First of all, I'd like to thank people for coming here and participating in this practice together as a community, as a Sangha. Thank you to all of you who help in other ways financially, especially. We can't keep going without your support, so please continue to help us if you can. If you can't, come here anyway. Do the best you can. So we're always looking for some kind of causation. Anytime anything shows up, what happened? Where did it come from? Who did it? Did I do it? Did they do it? Looking for causation, looking for blame, literally. And there really isn't one. Everything that shows up has countless. It's an understatement, multiple understatement. It's just, you can't even begin to count all the things that occur behind something else that give it its particularity as an event or a thing or a thought or an emotion. You cannot find it. And the ego mind, the self-centered mind, won't settle for that. It doesn't want that. It wants to know who the hell did this and why is this happening? Why am I feeling this way? Stop asking why questions. Well, you might have to ask a couple. But be very, very clear when you're asking why and you're asking what. The what question, which I've talked about off and on for years, what stops right at whatever it is you're questioning. And there probably won't be much forthcoming there because it is covered up with your preconceptions, your judgments, your opinions, your ideas, your culture. Rather than meet something right where it's at, we bring in all kinds of cultural things about that. You don't have to do that. You could actually have a willingness to not know what the hell it is. Give it 20 minutes. Give it 20 years. And just look at what it is. When it shows up as confusing or you cannot find any causation behind it, so you can find the off switch, whatever it may be. It's not such a bad thing. You are probably more tuned in to the actual situation that is in front of you rather than settling for some kind of, well, it's because of this, what she did, what they said. It's not that there isn't some of that in there, but you could just receive that rather than using that as some kind of leverage or justification for outflowing on everyone else or attacking someone or blaming someone for whatever is happening, whatever is showing up in your mind stream. Pretty difficult to do that. And of course, this is done with, as I see it, not that it couldn't be done some other way, perhaps, I don't know. Maybe. If you have another way, let me hear about it. Let me hear about that. This is done with awareness. So if you can do some of this with logic and reason and figuring things out and calculating and looking at what's coming in and going. You do some of that. But it's a good idea to look right directly at this and do it with your awareness. Awareness doesn't mean that you're looking at it and trying to, like a detective, trying to figure things out. Though some of that may happen spontaneously because of the various ways that situations show up in terms of their shape, their color, their texture, their tone. Very, very complicated in that way. Quite often what we do, I've given another talk where I think it was titled Talking to the Movie. Instead of just watching the movie of your mind, just watching what shows up in the mind, we talk to it, we add on, we ramp up, we overlay story after story, not just one story. One story would be okay, because it would disintegrate. The very nature of relative truth is it comes apart. What's put together comes apart, maybe in 6 years, maybe in 6 seconds. Whatever shows up won't last. The basic teaching of the 3 marks of existence is impermanence. Nothing lasts. All compounded things, including your thought process, including your worst thoughts, including your most wonderful thoughts, they barely can get any traction unless you give it traction with your bias, with ego, with wanting to know, wanting to have proof, wanting to know what's happening in the sense of who did it, who caused it, how can I stop it, do I need to stop it? Needs to be observed, and we do this by training the observer. I say train the mind, but what we're doing is training ourselves. If you're listening to what I'm saying, I'm not saying you can't practice other forms of meditation. Please go ahead. You'll know what you need to do. Maybe you don't need to practice Shikantaza right now. Maybe you need to do some other form. I'm not here to cram everybody into the same classroom, so to speak. But you could consider it. Shikantaza is this simple. Hold still. Watch what moves. It's that simple. And it's that difficult. Because what you immediately start, if you're holding very still, but you immediately start moving, start observing, is the way the mind keeps just spitting things up, coughing them. It's constant chatter. Trungpa Rinpoche called it subconscious gossip. Just gossiping and telling stories and telling. Sometimes we meet a person that can just not shut up. Not that we want them to shut up, we might want to just listen to them. They just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. I'm one of them, if you haven't noticed. Talk a lot. So not only will you eventually be aware of what is being said to you, but that awareness eventually, when it is being seen that there's no solid talker here, the talking may continue, but it is seen vividly that there's no one talking. There's no personhood here. You can do that. It won't stop you from talking. Everything you say might be a little bit more interesting than the crap you were talking about before you realized your true nature. Whole world is full of scientists and people who if they even get close to the nature of awareness, they immediately back up into the safer realm of analysis and proof. We have to have proof for that. Well, we have no proof. I mean, Susan sent me a link to Dr. Ian Stevenson's book. I think it's something in the Washington Post. I don't recall. And she's not here, I see. A very good article about Ian Stevenson, who talks about all of his work over the decades and decades before he passed away in 2007. Past life, the things that children remember about something that happened in a parent of their lifetime. Had a lot of disagreement during his life, criticism and so on, because people are looking for proof. In consciousness, that's about the only proof you're going to get as a child starts to remember something happened in 1938, and they were just born 8 years ago. This happens. But we don't have all of the first cause, we can't get behind that because it goes into consciousness. As soon as it leaves this realm of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thinking, emotion, as soon as it leaves that realm, or goes into some other dimension, perhaps. It's very difficult to trace that. And I would say, don't bother. Train your mind. Find out who you are, but find out what you need to do first. The very most important thing for you to do, in my opinion, is to find out, don't live another day without finding out who you are, or at least having the attention to see who this is, what this is. Find out that first cause, which is me. And see if there is one. See if there is actually a person. See when you have emotions, negative, positive, neutral, if there's someone having the emotions. Find out. No one can tell you, and if they do tell you, don't believe them. Don't disbelieve them, don't ignore them. But you might want to consider what I'm saying. Leave everybody. Socially distance yourself from everybody for a few hours, a week or a day or wherever, so that you can actually watch what is happening in your mind stream for yourself. So you see it. See if you can find first cause for anything. So what we're doing here is we're using, as meditators, we're using the mind itself, the consciousness itself, to look deeply into this. It takes quite a while because we get snagged by our opinions, our hopes and fears take us this way into this dark corner, all brightly painted, and into this rotisserie oven over here where you're cooking your thoughts and going in circles. Excuse me, not very good metaphors, but it's like that. Circular. It gives the illusion of getting somewhere, going around in circles, and then you realize that you're right back where you started from and feel maybe twice as bad. Do some questions if you have some. Make them as hard as you can. Yes, sir.
Geez, I'm buying. When we look at something being without first cause, it feels like it's touching on emptiness. And I was wondering how no first cause could also address the fullness, or what fullness is without first cause. Bowing.
So, yeah, good question. Seeing the emptiness and having a willingness to just, it's like you have a willingness to look at no answer, emptiness forever. You're not looking for anything but just whatever shows up, and it's empty. And there will not be any fullness until you actually looked at emptiness for quite a while. As is said in the tradition, empty of what you think it is and full of what it actually is. And the traditional way of talking about that is to say it's Buddha nature. Nothing sleeps anywhere. There isn't anything that's asleep. That's something physical beings do. Shut everything off for a while.
Geez, I'm bowing. What is our responsibility in recognizing this emptiness and fullness? Bowing.
So from the point of view of this teachings of the Buddha's Dharma, the Mahayana, the path of the Mahayana is to put others before yourself, save all beings. That doesn't mean go an opposite and be some kind of artificial hero. Excuse me. But to actually, when you're interacting with someone else, to be very, very considerate of what they're dealing with. Be considerate of that. See if you can see. You've been looking at your own suffering maybe for a few years. If you've been meditating for a while, you've been looking at that. See, it cannot be fixed. You cannot get rid of it. And you might be able to cover it up for a little while, but it will come back up the back stairs right into your mind stream and cause issues, cause problems, make things very uncomfortable. And it may show up as images of family members and what somebody said or didn't say, and all of the different paraphernalia that comes tagging along with any kind of emotion. Or you might get just a raw, pure emotion of having no source, which is a little bit closer to what you're actually looking for, which is the truth.
Thank you.
Further questions? Sir?
Geez, I'm bowing. Is no first cause pointing at no trigger also?
Somewhat. So the idea is to be very, very aware that what shows them up in your mind stream as an emotion, a feeling, a judgment, an evaluation, a memory, pain, pleasure, all of that could come up on its own, so to speak, but also can be triggered by what someone said or an event in your life that this caused that. It's just a way of showing you that everything is causing everything else. And we tend to streamline it, and with a sense of being somebody going somewhere. You'll notice that identity is never solid, it's never dependable, it's always dependent upon all kinds of emotions and feelings and thoughts and memories and judgments and conclusions about who we are, where we're going, what happened when we were 10 years old. All those stories get together and we keep piling those stories on, keep lecturing ourselves, talking to the movie inside. So we would also talk to the trigger. We could actually blame the trigger for the emotion. Emotion is ours. No one can, as I've said, been saying for years, I haven't said it recently, I guess, but I can say it now. No one's dumping a bunch of emotions in you. Those are yours. Not yours, the ego, but yours, this consciousness. The same consciousness that feels that, the same consciousness that registers yellow or gold, the same consciousness that is listening to this voice come out. It's not a person. If you think it is, you'll suffer and you'll go to war with others who you think are causing your suffering. No one's causing your suffering. There is no first cause. Cause and effect are relative truth, and it's a big lie. And yet we will hurt each other. We feel so intensely that we'll actually hurt somebody who hasn't even done anything to us, other than maybe looked at us too long. Or it could be a big misunderstanding. Something totally different than what you thought was happening. Projection more about that if you have. Pardon me. Eric? Yeah. Yes, sir.
No kavowing. In emptiness and fullness, will self and other show up in those bowing?
Yes. But at the same time, you see they're unreal. What I'm looking at here, I see you, I see Chokodawa, I see Gabe, I see everybody here, but what I'm looking at is not real. That doesn't mean I can abuse you just because you're not real, so therefore, there's no conclusion about it. There's no conclusion that everything is unreal. There's no conclusion that everything is real. There's no conclusion. There's no concluder, and there's nothing being concluded. And it's, to the ego mind, it's devastating. And at the same time, it leaves the ego completely harmless, because you can't destroy something that's unreal. I quite often talk about the what is it, chartreuse frog in the kitchen. How do you pronounce the word chartreuse correctly? Is that right? You're French, aren't you? I know you're from one of those countries. Huh?
Chartreuse.
Chartreuse. Chartreuse. Okay. So the no first cause is very similar, or of same kind of energy comes together in understanding. As I say, you can't really find another person. There's a body here and a body here, bodies everywhere, breathing, eating, going for walks, doing your laundry, and just the illusion is astonishingly insistent on being somebody, going somewhere, being someone, existing, living and dying, living and dying. Yes.
You and bowing. How would I be living my life if I understood no first?
How would you be living it if you understood what?
No first cause?
Well, to put it very literally, this is somewhat of a lie, because there isn't any right here, but you'd just be right here all the time. Wherever you were, you'd be there. You wouldn't abandon anything that was showing up for what it was, what it meant, who did it. You'd be looking right at it all the time.
You and bowing, is right here a place?
No, it's no location. If it is a location, then it doesn't have any center, it doesn't have any fringe, it doesn't have any location. It may have one temporarily, but that's just an instant situation. But it goes away because it's relative, and it can't self-authenticate particularly. That doesn't mean you get so confused you don't know the door from the window and start jumping out windows.
Beyond bowing, how can I be in no place?
You can't. And the reason you can't is your true nature is consciousness only. Has no location in time and space. It does not exist as an item or object that needs a place to be in. It's just consciousness only. And it does not fall in line with the cause and effect that most of the logicians and people that are analyzing everything, including quantum physicists, are still trying to make sense of physical reality because they think that's all there is. This just was the article that Susan sent, kind of saying that the brain produces consciousness. Well, this is just garbage. Sorry. Apologies to all the magical mystery tour scientists. So, very sorry about that. But look, don't limit your investigation, which is what they do when they looked at the work of, as I mentioned earlier, Ian Stevenson. They looked at and they just discounted it, and here he is recording the memories of 2-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds about things that happened in other times, and it's quite a bit of documentation about there was such a place, there was such a sister who had such and such a name. There's not just his work back in the last in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. In his book, I can't recall the name of his book right now, but it's available. Something but there are dozens of books, and I think in Virginia, the place that he was had some kind of a position there. I can't remember what it was. One of the head people there before he passed in 2007. They do that kind of research there, and they I think it seems like it was 150. I mentioned to you. I read that when I was reading that article. 150, something like that. People come to them every year with children who are having memories of other lifetimes. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't need to. We're not looking for proof. Don't look for proof. Look at what's in front of you, and you won't need proof for anything. If you awaken, you don't need proof. You need to come to some guy or some woman or some person and check and see if, like in ancient times, they used to say that. What was the teacher in Japan, or say, if you realize this, come and see me, and I'll confirm your realization. Wasn't there somebody who was doing that? I would say if you realize it, you're not going to need me to say anything. You'll know it. But it's not the relative knowing of knowing as opposed to not knowing. If you realize it, you realize you've always known it. But it's a different kind of knowledge than relative knowledge, which is right and wrong, up and down, back and forth, light and dark, existence, non-existence, non-existence. Those are not two separate things. Just because the body goes away. We put so much emphasis on the body. Should we? Probably. Yes, sir.
Cheese and Buying, could you say something more about not needing proof? And I'm thinking of, like, in a broader context, there's a lot of groups with a lot of really outlandish ideas that are foregoing relative truth for their just repeated doctrine. So how... Thank you.
Thank you for the question. You will have no doctrine. You may use a doctrine. You may use forms to help somebody. You may use a wall. Here's where you sit, and here's where you hold still, and here's where you watch or observe what's happening in the mind so that you can see the truth yourself. So you do some of that, and all of the doctrines that down through history, some of them are quite interesting. All the works of Vasubandhu are really, really interesting because it seems that he is able to see what this is, and be able to talk about it in such a way that it's supportive and helpful to that part of the consciousness that is still ensnared with thinking and logic and reason and so on. But the actual understanding is not an experience. How do you describe that? There's no experience. Well, how can you even know anything? Well, it's not knowing in the sense of I know that. It's just this. It's just knowing. You don't see anything else. I'm not looking at something else. You believe me? Do you? You believe me? Do that. That's part of the problem. Don't believe anybody. Don't believe me. Don't believe me. Consider what is being said. But don't, because as soon as you believe anything, the door slams. Very difficult, very challenging. It takes a whole life to do this. It takes a lot of dedication. And you will not discover it by suddenly, oh, now even though it's talked about that way quite often, like people talk about their enlightenment experiences. Won't be an experience. May be experiential. What do I mean by that? There's something about it that shows up as an experience, but the actual understanding itself is beyond that. And you won't claim anything. You can't. You can't claim anything because nothing has occurred. Good question. Please come in that direction. Let's take this apart. If you can deconstruct this, I'm all about helping you with that if I can.
Jeez, I'm bowing. Could you say something too about, so I think maybe I skipped a question, which is, what is it that we don't need evidence for? What is it that is no, there's nothing pointing at it, bowing?
You don't need evidence for something that is not separate from anything, that it has no separate thing. It has to have an otherness to it to have evidence for that. So if the fundamental situation, using relative words, the fundamental understanding is no understanding, the fundamental understanding. But it doesn't mean that if there's some aspect of consciousness that's still hiding in the corner, that's still worried or fearful about what's going to happen next, because they want to, one who is awake, and I don't claim anything, but the one who is awake, there is no next. So it's completely fearless. You can't destroy that one. It's not even a one. There's nothing there that has any opposition to it. And you actually see that or understand that. Maybe it's not a real seeing, maybe it's not a hearing or smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling, but some aspect, I would call it just the entirety of it. Sometimes it's called direct perception. Sometimes it's called is it a noun if you give it a name? Is that a noun? Like suchness, is that a noun? Is that I want some help here from your English majors. Where's Shoto at? He's in Ohio. Yes.
Geez, I'm bowing. Is there a way that relatively you could distill this back into how those of us still on the path are to work with this in our everyday life, bowing?
I can. Get to the cushion, find a way to sit down, hold still. You don't owe me anything. But hold still so that you can watch what your personal, conceptual, emotional, open fear prison actually is. So you can look at the bars of your prison and see that they're, look at them. You don't necessarily have to do mantras, though you may. You don't have to necessarily do anything other than hold still and look at it. But you may need help in other ways. You may need to go to refuge, to the teacher, the teaching in the community, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. You may. That would be situational for each person more.
Geez, I'm bowing.
I like that smile.
Yeah.
I like just before you say anything, let's just look at your smile. You destroyed it. But you crossed your eyes. Does that help you guys? No? Go ahead. Do it again. No, you can say what you're going to say. I'll stop.
Geez, I'm bowing. I wanted to ask about how we relate to a teacher that we can't verify. We can't verify anything you say. If you say you're looking at this or you see this.
Don't believe anybody. Don't believe me. If you have doubts about this, what's being said here, you might want to look twice about why you're even here. I'm not here to collect students. I do want to help you see the truth. You have to be a student. And when I say you have to be a student, you have to receive no matter what. And this sounds very threatening because, well, what if the teacher does this? Am I supposed to give that a stamp of approval or something? No, it's not a matter of approving or disapproving. It's about receiving until you see that you can't receive something you already are. The teacher is it's you. It's you. They know that they're nobody. If it's a true teacher, and they maybe may get famous because they're such a famous nobody. They're like Ramana Maharshi, Chogyam Trungpa, the 16th Karmapa, and then people that don't even know who they are down through the centuries in ancient medieval Tibet, Japan, China, Korea, India. More about that if you have.
Geez, I'm bowing. The difficulty is not for me finding some subtle reference point. So the idea of not believing, but also not skewing that into, well, just sticking with my guns. I'm going to stick with my ideas, and how to find our way into that referencelessness, or that area where we don't maybe know what is happening.
Yes, the way you find your way into that is to watch what moves. Watch the movement of the mind without adding, subtracting, or dividing, and then notice that some things add themselves. They kind of have their own energy. This is because they're coming from, you call it the alaya, but coming from an area of independent origination that you don't have personal contact with, but is not separate from you. So it's almost like you're starting to have someone else's feelings and emotions, because your own personal identity is the walls of the mind are starting to come apart, and identities are everywhere, and they're looking for somebody to occupy. Is there a personhood there? Not necessarily. More about it if you have it.
Is it a type of ignorance if we are willing to work with the teacher in that way, but unwilling to work with our world in that way?
Somewhat. But it's just a matter of time, continuing to return. As long as we're in a relative realm, we can do that. We can return to the wall. We can return to the teaching, return to the teacher, return to the community. That's the structure that seems to, from ancient times, has been beneficial and helped people. Is that what you're asking about? And if the intention when the intention becomes clear, you see that there won't be any result. The very intention, as Bodhidharma said, not Bodhidharma, but Dogen Zenji said, as soon as you take this seat, this is Buddha. As soon as you sit down, Buddha. As soon as you hold still, Buddha. Awakened. And nothing, it's not an occurrence, so you don't have anything to compare it to. Now, if you will hear some teachers talking that way, well, I used to be this way, but once I became awakened, now I have this wonderful feeling of being at one with everything. That's not it. It's not a feeling of being at one with anything. It's worse than that, better than that. Well,
Oh, thank you.
it's a good area if you can continue to ask in that area. Yes.
Kabbaling, you say not to look at, or not to believe, not to disbelieve, not to look away. Do we look at how we want to believe or not believe something that shows up?
Sure. Just look at that. Don't fix it. Don't change it. Don't do anything with it. If I'm understanding what you're asking, that's what I would say. That might ramp up for a long time. Like just talking to your stories, you have to be able to talk to your story, or see that you're talking to your stories, or talking to your. You have the first movie that's coming up, or the first story is what she said to me yesterday, and I stood there and I just took it. But I'm not going to do that again. I'm not putting up with that kind of abuse. Those kinds of things, little tiny mini lectures in our mind, and even Tom has had trouble talking to her too. So not just me. Well, we just, little story after little story. Next thing we have a whole bookshelf of stories about this particular situation and that woman and what she said and how she's acting. And it could go anywhere. There's just so many stories that get overlapped and overlapped and overlapped in order to protect us from the fundamental truth that we aren't separate from anything. We aren't separate from any feeling, any emotion that anybody anywhere has. You're separated. The body will protect you for a while, but when this body goes down, all that protection's gone. And here it comes. And what's coming? You don't know, nor do I. But find out now before the body drops, so that consciousness is liberated from the chains of your beliefs, your opinions, your ideas, your hope, your fear, all of this crap. Realize it. That's what I'm here to do, is to encourage you to do that. I can't do it for you, and I can encourage you. And sometimes I get permission from somebody where I can really go after them. I'm not here to hurt you or torture you. But sometimes it just gets really intense. I'm seeing how you're turning into a knot, and you've asked for this knot, has asked me to function as their teacher, so I might come up and remind you that you're balled up in a knot. And you might have problems with that. Probably will. And I might have problems with that. Or not. No joke intended. Have some time for questions, yes.
Somebody online.
Adriana bowing.
Yes, go ahead, Adriana.
Sokuzan, I think you said receive until you realize that you can't receive something that isn't yourself.
Something,
Sure.
yeah, you're not separate from anything, so at some point, all the receiving comes to an end, but the path is the suffering. And the ground is the suffering, and the path is receive what shows up here, receive what shows up out here. And also, if there's reaction, or if you just spontaneously get triggered and somehow go to war, then try to receive that as much as you can. Be responsible for what's showing up in your mind stream. Not about blame, but it's your mind stream. More?
Bowing. Do you stop receiving when you realize that? When you realize, period.
Yeah, you may and you may not. There's still a physical form here, as long as there's still a human form that is functioning in the way it's been functioning in my case for a long, long time. So you're not concerned with what happened, because then relative truth is you actually are dependent origination. So then you may act totally crazy, and you may live up to some kind of idea of other people can project on you anything they want, but they can't interfere. Their opinions about you are just, they don't have any purchase on you. So therefore you notice that you're kind of like if you suddenly put some consciousness if their consciousness showed up in a projection, in a movie theater, there's a big screen, and everybody comes up, they project their stuff on you. So, and you don't mind. And you receive that, you receive all of the, whatever's happening in terms of your karma as you were born a human being, and you had a lot of karma that came up, and that probably still will be running around looking for some kind of expression, perhaps. But nothing is validated. So it isn't like you say, well, this is just coming out of don't have conversations with yourself about it. Like, this must be coming out of my past life, because I certainly wouldn't act this way. So it must be when I was a stormtrooper or something. We just don't do that. It's not that kind of cartoon. This is not a cartoon. It doesn't have a past and a future. It doesn't have a before it happened and after it happened. It's just this. This occurrence is an illusion. And if you see it, it's not about believing it's an illusion.
Bowing. Is the receiving part of the illusion?
Anything you can posit, anything you can point to is an illusion. It's unreal. It has a reality, which usually has parts and shape and color. It has a kind of reality, but it's fundamentally unreal. Yes, sir.
Yin Long bowing.
Come on.
Is Buddha nature consciousness only?
It's a way of talking about it. Or words. We're stuck with the words, so that's all we have so far. But yes. Buddha meaning awake, and nature meaning, how would you say that? Did I just, he said it. Yeah, what he said. You agree? Freedom Mountain agrees with you. That's a plus. You don't know who Freedom Mountain is?
I don't know what he agreed with.
What you said?
The question?
Yeah. Right? Yeah, he shook his head again. We got two agreements. Being silly about it, but yes, it's more words, but yes, it's the nature of being awake would be consciousness only. And if there's still a body-mind complex, an organism living here that has understood that even before their body-mind dropped, then they may function in a completely ordinary way, just it might not be that noticeable. Or it could be outrageous, or it could be a little of each. There was no past or future to that particular person anymore. And anything they're doing is coming from what shows up in front of them. As Trungpa Rinpoche once said when he was asked, so Rinpoche, how so your teachers are dead, or they're gone, so who is your guru now? And he says, situations are my guru. So it's just a simple way of saying you don't decide anything ahead of time. There is no ahead of time, but whatever shows up, you may just receive it, you may respond to it, you may say something, you may not say something. If you are a Dharma teacher and you're relating to someone who's a student, then you don't decide how to teach that. They tell you how they need to be taught at that particular situation. So you may act in such a way that they leave. That's happened to me. My intention is as genuine as I can get. That doesn't mean I'm right. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, bring your insanity to me, and I'm going to show it to you. If you're not able to see your own craziness, then that's what the teacher's for. I can go deeper in that. If you have specific questions, I'm all about helping you with that. That doesn't mean that the teacher is some kind of wonderful, insightful being. No, the teacher is just consciousness. The same thing you are. It's just that the teacher knows it, and you have some work to do. Not just you, but anybody. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. You'd be somewhere being consciousness.
You Dao bowing.
Go ahead, Yudo. I'll get back to you in a minute. Go ahead, Yudo.
How do you tell the difference between what someone is projecting onto you and what you might be projecting out there? Bowing.
It's all a projection. On some level, it's all projection. So it's again, coming back, as I've said in different situations at different times, it's not about getting rid of projecting, it's about being aware that you're projecting. The causes and conditions that arise as Yudao or Navid or Sokuzan there's dependently arisen. You do not have a choice about this. It isn't like you can realize your true nature and suddenly stop doing this or doing that, or start functioning differently, or be more enlightened or something. Not that kind of thing doesn't give us an inspiration to try to, as Trungpa Rinpoche talked about, having an enlightened society. What you're going to do if you work on that is have a whole lot of failure, because it's such an incredibly huge ball of like garbage, confusion.
Sokurin bowing. As a student, receiving a particularly difficult teaching from you, if it's direct and perhaps painful to receive? Is doubt, confusion, are those naturally going to arise?
Not what?
Are doubt and confusion or any emotion, are those natural to arise?
Yes.
So Granbowing, you said, if you have doubt toward this teacher, you may want to look closely as to why you're here.
Yes. Don't you think it's a good idea? Doesn't mean you're going to leave, but you might want to look at that. What is that? What is it? And are you supposed to go the other way and just trust the teacher? Like, what do they call that? Blind faith? I say don't take any position on anything. And then what shows up is exactly what you need to look at. So some of that might involve looking at, I certainly had to look at that with, I'm not getting this from what I was taught directly, but my experience of relating to two different teachers in two completely different ways. And there was a lot of times when I did not trust them. But I didn't give up on it. But it was painful. It's painful to be in that situation where you have no proof and you can't find anything. You can't find anything. You can't ask anybody because you see some people are doing kind of a blind face thing, and other people are doing something else and you're not sure what they're doing. So you can't really find an example of how you should work with this. You have to do it yourself. It has to be extremely personal for you. And it's not easy to do that. Well,
So Granbowing, you're forward about being a teacher that can be outrageous. When teachings arise where that I don't know what to trust, how do we work with that?
as a student
Yes,
and as a monk,
as a monk.
don't do anything. Any movement at all is just that, it's movement. Don't just watch the movement, don't produce any movements. This doesn't mean you don't go to the restroom, it doesn't mean you don't go for a walk or over a bike ride or hang out and watch a movie or do all kinds of things like that. Or even reflect on something the teacher said. This is why we study this material. That's why we study things I've said and things other teachers have said. We've been studying Dogen for I don't know how many years, 7 or 8 years. Like once a week anyway. Just continue to study.
So Granbowing, you're teaching that anything can arise in the mind in response to you as your student.
Yes. The important thing is if you receive vows, just return to the vows. The vow to be with all things, the vow to save all beings. Because there's no proof there's no result. It's the intention to do that. And this is why you start to lift off from the glue of relative truth. You start to just rise above that. It's a way of talking about it. You don't go anywhere. Nothing goes anywhere. In the ultimate situation, nothing occurs. Nothing actually occurs. In the relative situation, something occurs, but that's an illusion. So the nothing that occurs in ultimate truth is real. And you're not separate from that. No one in here is. And I'm looking at it. And don't believe what I'm saying, but consider it. Find this in your own mind. Find it in your own heart. You'll have no proof. You won't need it. You won't need anyone. You won't need me to come and congratulate you. Like this. Go ahead, please.
Susan Dowling. So, speaking of congratulations, so Sokuzan, I've noticed there's, I guess you'd call it like a line of questioning some of us get into. I know I do it, and I know I do it because when other people do it, it's so obvious and familiar to me. But it seems like there are questions that we might ask that are designed to have you respond with the congratulations, you're great, you're doing great, just keep going. whether it's conscious or unconscious, I have no idea. My question is, what is it about all of this that you're teaching or the path that seems to reduce adults to the level of 6-year-olds wanting a pat on the head and a gold star? Bowing.
Give me a minute, will you? I need to look at it in everybody's face here. Need a gold star? Pat on the head. Gold star? Pat on the head. You got any? Huh? Fresh out. What is it? Let me come back, and I appreciate the question, but what is it you fundamentally want to know? Because it's just a matter of there's a teaching person who understands something, and there are student persons who are confused about something, who have conflicting emotions about the nature of what this even is, this reality. What is this? Why is it? You could say there's a why question. They just come up. Why am I feeling so terrible? Nothing has actually happened. But I get up in the morning, I feel terrible. Well, maybe this isn't happening to you. But if you're on the path or anything like that time, eventually the stories start to drop off and you just have raw feeling and emotion. I'm not condemning you to anything. But so there's an aspect where there's the teacher and then there's students. And so we approach that in lots of different ways. Everyone is working with their mind and as well as they can. And so is there something I'm missing in what you're, some people might act like children a little bit, but not.
It's Susan Bowling, thank you. It's not so much acting like children, it's being reduced to, I guess maybe it's because this is so difficult, maybe it's because we haven't had any realization, but it's being reduced to a level where you're just asking for some kind of positive reinforcement. You can't, it's beyond, I can't get it, I'm confused, help me. It just seems so basic, and I'm just wondering, what is it that's driving the train here? Bowing.
I think it's different. What you're experiencing there is not necessarily what everybody else is experiencing. So everyone has a completely unique situation, and if you talk to someone, if you talk to anyone here, I would venture to say, talk to anyone here and have them, and you don't know that I'm their teacher, and ask them, and you find out they have a teacher, ask them to describe their teacher. It won't show up. What you just described there, everyone sees something different over here as a teacher. I know I have, a couple dozen students, and they all, when I talk to them, I meet them in the stuff that they're in. It may be deep and smelly, or it might be a different dynamic happening that's covering up things. It might be more of an intellectual cover-up than the emotional one. So it's so much different with each person. I don't know if anybody wants to volunteer or anything. Chisho, I see you shaking your head. Maybe you could say something about what it's like to be a student of Sokuzan. Is that anything like what she's talking about? Do I ever give you a pat on the head for any damn thing?
Chisho, absolutely not. What a moron.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that I'm just using him as an example, but I could pick out anybody here, anybody in this room, and it works so much differently for each person. Each person is working with their particular walls of the mind, just to have a general statement, their way of being shut down. Your particular way of shut down, you've had many interviews with me, and I don't think that I treat you as a child, do I? Is there something like that where I'm condescending, like
no, Susan Bowling, it's not treating, it's not coming from you. I think where I see it, I can see it in others. So that's why I'm saying I'm sure it's in me, where the whole thing just gets reduced to please tell me I'm doing okay. I'm okay. Remember that book? I'm okay, you're okay. That's what it seems like. There's a lot of asking for that, and sort of connected. I heard you say it was related to a question Unyo asked you, and you said you tell yourself before you come on these talks, be nice, don't be pushy or aggressive. And I'm thinking, what is being nice? I mean, Why would being nice be more effective than being pushy or aggressive, Valerie?
I don't lecture myself, so if I said that I come on here and say be nice, don't be pushy or aggressive, I don't say that to myself. I did say that to you.
No, you said it on a talk. Unyo asked you a question, and
Okay.
you were a little bit sharp with her, and then you said,
A little bit.
I say to myself, be nice, don't be pushy or aggressive. Valerie.
She caught me. Did she catch me? No. Does anybody remember me saying that? It's not important. What is important is let's get to what it is you want to know. So maybe I'll have a response that would be helpful to you.
Thank you, Susan Bowling. Connected to the last thing I said, I know for myself, sort of getting hit upside the head by a 2x4 tends to work better than somebody covering it up in, sweetness and light, Bowling. Because the sweetness and light, I think it's easy to ignore, Bowling.
Okay. Okay, Jishin, you want to clarify what Susan's asking?
Jishin Bowing. I would like to clarify that my question is completely not related to Susan's question.
Okay, let me have it then.
Are we looking for something which can never be found?
Yes.
Bowing.
Yeah, you can't find this because you are this. You are what you're looking for. It's just not something that I didn't invent this. It's been said way before I got here by other people who are teachers or end up being teachers in some way, one way or another. But you already are that, so there isn't anything to find. But you may have to search, as Papaji, the Indian, I'm not sure what the tradition was, Advaita master of the previous century, Papaji, Parlal Punja, I think, or something like that was his name. But anyway, he was a very direct, straightforward, quite a interesting teacher, and he would just keep saying to his students, "Give up the search. Stop looking for anything. Give up the search." So, and I would say, face the wall. Sit down, face the wall. And just watch what arises. You don't have to necessarily search for something. So he has a point there a little bit.
My second question was, how do we abandon the search? Bowing.
I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm just saying watch what moves. Watch what moves in your mind, and notice that the identity part of the consciousness is not stable, and it is looking for stability, and it will get it with anger. I'm the one who's mad, or with grasping, or some solidifying something, grasping it, an opinion, an idea, judgment, belief in this and this. That she said, and they said, and they did this, and this is what's true. And to lock down on something, it's a common word for that is fixation. And it's not about not fixating, it's about being aware that you're doing that. That takes a while because that can be embarrassing to that part of the consciousness we call the ego. It's embarrassing to be shown to be a fool. We don't want that, so we will cover it up maybe for our whole life, possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can close at that point. Thank you so much for...
Hi, I'm Senshu, one of Sokuzan's monks. Sokuzan offers his wisdom tirelessly with complete love and devotion. If you value these teachings, Sokuzan, the mandala of SokukoJi, please consider donating at sokukoji.org. Thank you.